Hi, I'm Marvin Curtis.
I'm Topher Brown. Welcome back to Keys versus Strings. A little bit different style video for you today. We're going to give you not so much a step-by-step guide as to how to be successful, but really just personally what it's taken for us to get to the point that we're at now as full-time musicians.
Yeah, why not do what you love, you know?
Yeah, exactly. And that is the number one question that we get asked. I mean, wouldn't you agree at gigs? Hey, what do you guys do during the day? What's your day job?
Yeah, and absolutely. I hate that question of, why don't you get a real job? Right. You know?
Right. Well, for those of you who may not know, this is our real job. We play music full-time. It's a full-time job. We've sort of crafted this thing into a business. We kind of want to give you not necessarily the secret to our success, but just the things that we've done over the course of our career up to this point to allow us to be able to do this as a full-time job. I think that the very first point that I want to make, and you chime in here when you feel like it, but I feel like the very first thing we should talk about is the fact that in order to do this full-time, you do have to treat this like it's a full-time job.
Absolutely. I mean, you see so many bands that, you know, they treat it more like a party, you know.
Or a hobby.
Yeah. But at some point, you've got to get serious.
Right. And I think that one of the reasons that we've been able to do this the way that we're doing it is because we actually sat down one day and we had that conversation. Hey, this is not just going to be a party. We're not going to have that party mindset all the time. We're going to treat this like it's our full-time job. And just a tiny bit of backstory for you. I had a 9-to-5. I was working in sales in an office and doing 9-to-5, and the paycheck was really good. But there was part of me that just felt not fulfilled creatively. I couldn't, I wasn't able to express my gift in music the way that I wanted to. I sat down with my wife one night. I basically said, would you kill me if I said that I wanted to quit my job and I wanted to do music full time? So for me, that was like the beginning of, hey, let's get serious about this. And that's when you and I had that conversation.
Absolutely.
Okay, what are we going to do to get serious about this?
I guess my start was my dad happened to be chief of security at the governor's mansion, and so they needed a piano player for a Christmas event. My dad just told the governor's wife, hey, my son plays. We just need some background music. So I had a grand piano there. I wasn't expecting to get paid, but I thought it was cool to be playing at the governor's mansion. And at the end of the night, the governor's wife set a check or an envelope upon on the piano, and I opened it up. It was $600. Now, I was like 16, 17 years old.
That's a heck of a lot of money. That's a lot of money now for a 38-year-old.
Right. How many yards do you have to cut?
Yeah, several.
That kind of initiated the idea that I could make money doing this. But now we need to know which direction it is to make that $600 consistent, you know.
One thing I want to say is you have to measure success for you personally. Success, there's no, as far as I'm concerned, in music, there's no black and white definition of what being successful means. That's up to you. So right. If you want to do this part-time and this is your side hustle and that's what you consider being successful, that's completely up to you. For us, what we consider successful is being able to do it as a full-time job. So this conversation is going to be based around our idea of success, which is doing it full-time right. Musician. And just to give you a little bit of context, my family, have a wife and I have a child, 5-year-old daughter, and we are a one-income family. So music pays all of our bills. Pays the mortgage, it pays 2 car notes, pays insurance, the whole 9 yards. Music pays all of that. So it can be done. I guess that's like the main focus of today is it can be done, but you have to be willing to put the work in to do it. Let's talk about money for just a second, about how you base what you charge for yourself on. I've always maintained that you need to set a specific number for yourself, and you have to be the person that comes up with that number. And so I think what we've done is kind of survey the landscape around us and see what the going rate is for individual musicians, for bands, and all that kind of stuff. What we decided early on when we started doing keys versus strings was, let's come up with a set budget. So we have personally a quota, a specific dollar amount quota that we need to make individually per week.
Right.
My advice would be to set that goal, to set that minimum amount of money that you want to make in a week. I would say that that's more important, would you agree, than setting a minimum amount of money that you want to make per gig? Would you say that it's more important to set a weekly budget? Because let's be honest, we're playing music here, okay? We're not on the side of the road busting up asphalt and breaking our backs. The way that we look at it is we get paid to load in and load out. That's the real work. Playing music is fun. That's the fun part.
I also think we're getting paid for early studies. I mean,
absolutely.
You know, I've been playing since I was a kid. I've been studying music longer than doctors have been studying doctoring. Right. You know,
doctoring.
You know, it's just we've committed to this. You know, we way back when. You know, I didn't know it was going to be at this capacity, but this is something. Even if we're doing something else, I'd still be playing. You know, it's an art that never leaves. My dad's retired from the highway patrol, and so, I mean, you walk up into his house, he might be playing the piano. He's been playing piano his whole life too. But how cool is it that we're able to do what we love? It's not a hobby,
right?
You know, it's never been a hobby. We've been serious about
this.
It's
a passion.
You know, what is it? And on your question about coming up with that figure per week, I booked the first gig on a Sunday afternoon. So it used to be that we had to wait till the weekends, maybe Friday or Saturday, and we play with full bands, so that we had to split that money. So you might be looking at $150 to $200, way less than that
on a good night.
Early, you know. But we were excited about it. We were drawing a fan base. People were excited about what we were doing. Now you have venues, whether it be solo, even sometimes full bands on a weeknight.
Like the opportunities are more now. There's
Right.
more opportunity to get out and play now. So like if you want to do it full time, let's just be honest. You can do it as much as you want to. We may hit our weekly quota on one night. We might have a wedding, and it's a full band, and it's a big to do, and it's a high paying gig. Awesome. We hit our quota on one night. Now, does that mean that we take off the next week? No, we book our calendar up throughout the year. What we always say is anything we make above our quota is a raise.
Exactly. I remember a couple of years ago, we had 10 gigs in one
week.
Now, I mean, there's only 7 days, so you know that we did a couple of those.
Doubles,
Yeah, I mean, we'd do something earlier in the day and then go rush, pack up, go to the next gig. But we had this number. I mean, you do the math. Even if we made $100 a man,
were we busting it? Absolutely. Were we tired, exhausted? Absolutely. But was it completely worth it? Yes, because we're getting to do this for a living. I mean, not too long ago, we had a gig in Brandon, Mississippi, and that gig got done at 1 o'clock in the morning. We were done loading out at 2 o'clock in the morning, and we had a gig at 9 o'clock the next morning in Philadelphia, Mississippi, which is about an hour and a half from there. We get done with loadout, 2 o'clock in the morning. We drive to Philadelphia, Mississippi, get a couple of hours of sleep, and have a 7:30 load-in time.
Right.
We play from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m., and then guess what we did? We packed up and we drove 2.5 hours back across the state almost to get to Vicksburg, Mississippi to play another gig that night. And then what did we do? We packed up there and we drove all the way back to Philadelphia, Mississippi to get up the next morning and do the same morning gig that day.
Sometimes you don't want to miss opportunities, and one of those gigs happened to be a casino. Casino is more profitable, I would say. We kind of look for those corporate type, casinos weddings, weddings versus a restaurant. Not to say that we don't do well at that restaurant, but our end game is not just higher paying, but sometimes when you go to the higher paying gigs, you run into people that will get you even bigger gigs than that. Topher had the contact on the casino. I booked the restaurant. He calls me up and says, hey, we got this opportunity. I didn't want to miss the opportunity as well.
So let's bend over backwards and make sure that we get the opportunity, but still stay true to the gig that we already had booked.
And we made killer money that week.
Yeah, I mean, we hit our quota in 2 days.
Yeah.
That brings up another point. You got to be okay with getting the high-paying gig, turning right around and doing the low-paying gig.
Right.
You got to be okay with that. That's one of the most important things that I think that I could say. You got to be content with, as long as you're hitting your quota, you got to be content with what you're playing. Otherwise, I would suggest not playing it.
So even though we might make our quota on that one gig, question is, do we want to do some overtime? Because everything else, even though it may be $200 or $300 extra for the week, it all racks up. We need to check out our family time. Look at the pros and cons if we want to make some extra money, because we've already made our quota.
So just because you hit that quota maybe on one gig or 1 or 2 gigs, that doesn't give you an excuse to go and cancel your low paying gig. You always want to stay true to what you have booked, because you're going to need those gigs down the road.
Absolutely. You can't get too cocky just because you're making the kind of money that you want. You need to fulfill your obligations. That's just not a cool thing to do, is cancel just because you already made your quota. That don't even make sense.
And I would say, in terms of like what to charge when you're trying to figure out what your personal goal is going to be, just to be clear, like we have that weekly quota, but we definitely do have a minimum dollar amount that it'll take us to come play at a gig. So, but that needs to be something that you decide on, a figure that you come up with on your own, and it depends on whether or not you're trying to do this full time or whether or not you're trying to do it part time. That figure will probably change a little bit. But my attitude is this: I have a certain dollar amount in mind. I take into consideration travel, the length of the gig, and then I decide. Because that's the beauty of doing this full time, is you are your own boss. Right. You cannot do the gig. So you have to come up with that figure, have that figure in mind, and when somebody comes in and says, well, I can't give you that, but I can give you $50 less. Well, you have the decision to make then. Right. A lot of times the venue owner or whoever it is that's booking you, they're not going to change their mind. They've got a set price that they pay everybody, and it doesn't matter who you are or how good you are. So you have to decide in that moment, do I want to go play this gig for $50 less? And my advice would be, when you're trying to make that decision and you say to yourself, it's $50 less than my quota, but I probably don't need to turn down this money. Right. If that's your attitude, then go play the gig.
Absolutely. Go
play the gig. Also, you don't know what's going to come out of that gig. Pass your business card around, you may book a $10,000 wedding. I'm exaggerating, but it could be.
I look at every, large or small, every gig as being a one-shot opportunity. Yeah. And that's hard to see. I remember one time we were playing together, and it was several thousand people out there. The adrenaline was high. Right. All the guys, everybody in the band was just all over the stage. You had that feeling of, we've arrived.
Right.
We're about to hit the big time.
Whatever that means.
The very next weekend, reality hit. There was like 20 people out there. Didn't even know if they were listening to us or not. I think I saw a few people bobbing their heads a little bit. The morale of the band, everybody kind of just...
We slunk back down.
Just half-heartedly played. And so we all had a meeting during the break. I said, look, this is what we love to do. Let's have, we don't
let's have fun doing it.
Yeah, let's have fun doing it. We came back and just killed it in front of those 25 people. Took our next break. I happened to go up to the bar and was getting something to drink, and this guy said, "Y'all got a business card?" And he said, "I booked for the Dixie National Rodeo." We ended up booking a gig that we thought was the worst gig ever.
That's right. Yeah.
And we ended up playing in front of
one of our best gigs ever.
Right, 3,000 or 4,000 people again.
You have to, and you're not going. It's not going to be perfect every time. Every year we go down to Key West, Florida. And we play for a solid week, and it's paradise. Right.
Right.
It's awesome. It's amazing.
Paid vacation.
Yeah, paid vacation, and then we'll come home and we'll play at a restaurant or somewhere, and nobody cares. And so it's really, really easy for us to think, don't they know that we just went to Key West and played in front of thousands of people? Well, no, they don't know. That's the thing. They don't know that. And so
but the question is, how did we get to Key West?
Exactly. Right.
I mean, we didn't just...
was it off of one of those smaller restaurant gigs? Possibly. All right, so that brings me to the next thing that I want to talk about, and that's venues. A lot of people ask this question on Facebook. Our attitude with venues and venue owners is pretty much the same across the board. My opinion about venues and venue owners is we are independent contractors. We come in and we play at their venue, and for that 3 or 4 hours that we're there, they're the boss, period.
That's it.
They have hired us to come in and do a job. And I know that a lot of folks, a lot of bands and individual musicians and stuff, you know, they'll get real bent out of shape about a venue owner maybe asking them to do something that's a little bit different than what they do. But you have to understand that you work for them that night. And so it's a pride issue.
Right.
Now, that doesn't mean that you need to be like bending the knee to the venue owner, but you are there working for them in that moment. You need to maintain that relationship. How important is it for you to maintain relationships with business owners, with venue owners?
Early on, you're going to find that you'll spend a lot more time on the phone, on Facebook, sending emails, set lists. You're going to spend a lot of time. And if you're not ready for that part of it, the work during the week, because the gig is actually the fun part. You got to get the gig first. But once you start building that rapport with that club owner or venue owner, you eventually start becoming friends with them. Now if you go in there and get some kind of attitude about pay, or even if you've discussed about pay and it didn't quite pan out like you thought it would, you are missing the point. It's about the big picture, not about the now. If you start bashing people on Facebook, bashing the club owner, they said this, and say, no, it's not about that. If you had a bad night, you can determine later within your band, talk about it personally. I don't think we need to play there anymore. That's one thing. But you might have gotten a good gig out of that.
You got to keep all of that stuff internal. You got to keep all of those conflicts and all that kind of stuff within your circle. And here's why I say that. I hate to break it to you, unless you're like 1 out of 100. If you go on Facebook bashing a club or a venue, thinking that you're going to hurt them, you're not.
Right.
In fact, you're doing the exact opposite thing, and you're hurting yourself. And that's a really important point that I want to make sure that we're clear on, is that I get it. I understand. We've both been there. We've both been there,
Right.
and it sucks. Okay, when somebody is a jerk to you, when they don't give you what they said they were going to give you. We've run into every situation and scenario you can possibly imagine. We've run into it.
Yeah.
Okay, we've dealt with it. But the one thing that you have to steer clear from is to airing out all of that dirty laundry. Because there are other club owners, venue owners, restaurant owners paying attention to what you're doing and saying. Let me say, you may be absolutely right. You may be completely 100% right. But it doesn't matter. Because every club owner that sees that, every venue, restaurant owner that sees you talking like that, they're going to be thinking, oh man, what happened, first of all, and do I want to hire these guys? Because I don't want them talking about my restaurant venue like that.
You need that venue. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. You might have some other venues that you have a relationship with, but those are few and far between. You've got to fill in the blanks. At first, that venue does not need you. You may be going into a new area. They already have people. They just want somebody to entertain. But if you go in there and you knock a home run and those people are having a good time, and maybe you did bring a few folks, you want to create a long-term relationship with these venue owners to where they need you instead of you needing them.
Exactly.
And that's where we're thankful and grateful that we have a good rapport with our venues, majority of them.
Yeah. And there's some that we've lost. You know, let's be real. There's some that we didn't get a second shot at. But you can't take that stuff personally. You got to dust yourself off and go after the next one. If you go out there and you have a bad experience at a venue and then you immediately go to social media and say, hey, this venue's terrible. These people are terrible to work with. You know, musicians beware, stay away from here. To me, what you're doing for yourself is creating a reputation for yourself and your brand. You're saying that I don't mind airing out all of my dirty laundry here on social media. If that's your thing, that's totally fine. You do you, boo-boo. All I'm saying is don't be surprised if the gigs start falling off one by one.
Right.
If you consistently do this, don't be surprised if the gigs start falling off one by one. All right, guys, that's going to do it for this video. There's a whole bunch of stuff that we didn't get to cover that we want to cover, so stay tuned for part 2. That's coming very, very soon.
Yeah, and again, smash the like button.
Subscribe, baby.
Tell your friends to subscribe.
Drop us a comment. Let us know what you would like for us to talk about on the next one. We love you guys. Keys versus strings. Out.
Yes.